speaker tonight is Martyn Layzell. Martyn will be known to many of you because he's been on the staff here. He's been a curate on the staff here for the last 4 years. But he may not be known to all of you because most of the time he's been at HTB Onslow Square. So Martyn's married to Emily. They have 4 boys, and he's a great guy. So will you give him a warm welcome as he comes to speak to us? And he's got the uniform too. I need to get the uniform. You and Toby got the uniform. Can I have one of these for Christmas? Will somebody give me one like that, and then I'll know
I have to buy you one. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nikki. It's great to see everybody. Happy Christmas. If you have a Bible anywhere near you, perhaps reach your hand into the chair back in front of you. If you want to grab your Bible. And tonight we are going to stay with tradition, and we're going to look at the birth of Jesus Christ. So if you want to open up to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1, and I think it's on page 975. Matthew chapter 1, verse 18. This is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was found to be with child through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." All of this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he had no union with her until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. Well, there are only 2 more sleeps until the big day. I, as Nikki said, am married to Emily. We have 4 sons. Jack, Harry, Jesse, and Theo. And as you can imagine, it's a very exciting time in our household. They have been counting down the days since about May 27th to Christmas. And I'd just like to know here on the 23rd of December, bearing in mind there's only 2 more sleeps to go, just put your hand up if you've still got Christmas shopping to do. Come on, don't be shy. As I suspected, it is pretty much all the men. If tonight you've still got Christmas shopping left to do, then you are in good company, particularly as a man. Apparently, men are 3 times as likely to shop on Christmas Eve and twice as likely to buy their loved ones presents from supermarkets than women. I stand here rather glibly knowing that I've done all of my Christmas shopping, and this year nothing came from Sainsbury's. I love absolutely everything about Christmas. It's such an exciting time, but as you well know, Christmas can also be a little bit of a stressful time. And as well as being a stressful time, Christmas, I don't know if you knew this, but it's an extremely dangerous time. Christmas should actually come with a health warning. I don't know if you knew this, but on average, 3 people die every year from testing 9-volt batteries on their tongue. 5 people were injured last year in accidents involving out-of-control scare-electric cars. 142 people were injured by not removing all the pins from new shirts. And 31 people have died since 1996 by watering their Christmas tree whilst the lights were still turned on. So you need to be very, very careful around Christmas. I don't know how you prepare for Christmas as it comes around every year. One of the things that I love to try and do, if I can, in such a busy household, is to try and reread the gospel narratives, to go back to the first Christmas, the original story as we have just read. But I have to admit, this year, as I was rereading the story, one of the main things that struck me was not so much the awe or the wonder, but it was just the utter obscurity of the first Christmas story. The almost absurdity of that Christmas story, the fragility of the Christmas story. And as I read it through, it left me thinking, what on earth is God trying to show us by coming to earth in this way as a baby 2,000 years ago? I want to share with us just 3 very little thoughts as we approach Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. That's what I think God is trying to communicate to us through this first story. Firstly, God is with us in our humanity. If you look at verse 23, it says, "The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel," which means God with us. We are all potentially hoping for the perfect Christmas. Perfect presents, perfect tree, perfect food, the perfect family. But for pretty much every one of us sitting here tonight, this isn't the reality. And usually it isn't the reality in a pretty catastrophic way. 2 or 3 years ago, I was working in a church called St. Aldate's in Oxford, and I was leading the worship for the Christmas Eve late night service. And I got home at about 1:30 in the morning from that service. And I looked into the lounge after my wife had put all the children to bed, and there were the stockings. She'd brought them down. She'd put all the presents in the stocking. And Emily's stocking was there on the fireplace. And in that moment, I made a decision to leave her stocking until the morning. I thought, you know what, I'll be up before everybody else. I'll come down, I'll put her presents in, and then it'll be fantastic. Well, of course, you can imagine what happened. After going to bed that late, I woke up in the morning after everybody else. I went downstairs, and to confront us at the entrance of the living room by the tree where we'd put all the presents, my son, Harry, was standing in front of Emily. And with tears in his eyes, he says, "Mum, I'm really sorry, but there is nothing for you." And in that moment, everything inside me died. I thought, oh, what a way to begin Christmas Day. Once, there was a perfect man who met a perfect woman. And after a perfect courtship, they had a perfect wedding, and their life was, of course, perfect. But one snowy Christmas Eve, they were taking a drive in their perfect car, having a perfect conversation. And on this perfect journey, they saw a man in distress on the side of the road. And of course, being the perfect couple, they stopped and they saw that it was Santa Claus, who had somehow managed to break down with his reindeer. I'm not sure how that happened. But being the perfect couple, they decided to pick up Santa Claus. And because he had all the presents that still needed delivering to the children, they decided to help him with all his deliveries. But unfortunately, that snowy Christmas Eve, the driving conditions deteriorated. And as they were driving around the dark roads, they ended up having an accident. And only one of them survived the accident. My question tonight is, who was the survivor? The perfect woman survived. She, in fact, is the only one who really existed. Because everybody knows there's no Santa Claus and there is no perfect man who exists. So if there is no perfect man and no Santa Claus, that means that the only person driving the car must have been the perfect woman. And if she hadn't been driving the car, they may not have had the accident in the first place. There's no such thing as the perfect Christmas, because life is not perfect. Christmas is not perfect. And it was no accident on that very first Christmas that the King of the universe was born in a stable, laid in an animal's feeding trough. That was the point. Perfection was born into imperfection. The Prince of Peace was born into our chaos, to show us that he is with us in our mess, in the midst of our problems, in the midst of our situations, in the midst of our challenges and difficulties. I love the Message version of the Bible. And this is what it says in John chapter 1, verse 14. It says, "The Word Jesus became flesh and blood and moved into our neighborhood." Christmas is such an exciting time, but it's also a time when loneliness is most keenly felt, when the pain of broken relationships and families can be most acute. But the good news is that whatever situation or circumstance we find ourselves in, whatever kind of Christmas day we're going to find ourselves in just a couple of days' time, God is there with us. If we could condense all of the truth of Christianity into just 3 words, I want to suggest that it would be God with us. The God of the Bible who we worship, he's not distant or aloof. He's not the creator of the universe who set it into being and just left it to its own devices. He is with us. The Bible says that he will never leave us nor forsake us. He is Emmanuel. Secondly, the thing that God wants to show us through this story is that God has a plan and a purpose for us. If you look at verse 22, it says, "All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet." The coming of Jesus as the Messiah, the promised one, fulfilled over 350 Old Testament prophecies. After centuries of expectation, of longing, the promised Messiah is born. And where does God choose? Bethlehem. If God wanted to make a little bit more of a splash with the news, Jesus could have been born just 5 miles down the road in Jerusalem. Maybe God could have revealed his glory to the religious leaders, the high priests, the authorities. But instead, he chooses to reveal his glory to shepherds sitting on a hillside, lowly men, outsiders on the outskirts of town. I love going to nativity plays. One of the things I love about nativity plays, apart from the fact that they're usually hilariously funny because they go very wrong, is the fact that the teachers have this fantastic skill of casting every child, even though there's only about 8 characters in the nativity story. And I remember one year my son Harry came home and I was feeling very proud when he said he'd been cast in the nativity, and I thought he was going to say he was a shepherd or perhaps a king or perhaps Joseph. But he said, "No, Dad, this year I've been cast as a door knocker." And I said to Emily, I was like, wow, they're even giving parts to children of door furniture. And she said, "No, silly, He's actually the one who's going to knock on the door. He's not actually going to be the door knocker. But the truth is, God uses unlikely and insignificant people to fulfill his purposes. Mary, a young Galilean girl. Joseph, probably a teenage carpenter. The shepherds, as we've said. It's to these kind of people, the humble, the lowly, who God chooses to reveal his glory. Through this, God is saying that everyone is welcome. This isn't just truth and good news for the Jews, but this is great news for the Gentiles. The psalmist says that the Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. This story shows us that God has a plan. You may be sitting here tonight and you may be asking yourself the question, does God really have a plan for my life? You may be looking at your life and thinking it really doesn't look like God knows what he's doing. If you knew what my life looked like. But Mary and Joseph must have looked at their circumstances. The Bible says that she pondered these things in her heart. And surely some of that pondering, she must have thought, can this really be true? Is God really in control? Does he really want to use me? Does he really have a purpose and a plan for my life? God says that he works all things for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Thirdly and finally, this first Christmas story shows us that God loves us. In verse 21, we read, "She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." One of the most exciting things about Christmas, of course, is gifts. I know that we say it's more blessed to give than to receive, but I'm a firm believer that in Christmas tradition that doesn't really count. I love receiving gifts. And every family has their different traditions. I'm sure if we went around this room, everybody would say, well, I wake up in the morning and I open all of my gifts. Or no, we go to church first and we open our gifts. Or I wait for the family to come. Or we wait for the Queen's speech. I can remember vividly as a child on Christmas morning, waking up, peering over the duvet and seeing that magical cluster of presents at the end of my bed. Now, I want to put my head under the duvet in the morning. But instead of me getting great joy from seeing my presents, I get immense joy and pleasure from seeing my boys look at their gifts and opening them. Why? Why do I get great joy and pleasure? It's because I love them. Because I am so for them. Of course, the greatest and most costly gift that has ever been given is when God gave his one and only Son to die for us. Philip Yancey, who was speaking here a number of months ago, he reminds us the God who created matter took shape within it, as an artist might become a brushstroke on a painting, or a playwright might become a character within his own play. Why does God come as a baby? Why does he burst into humanity, leaving all the glory and splendor of his majesty? It's because he loves us. He loves you and he loves me. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. In the incarnation, God descends from all power, authority, and majesty. And he comes in weakness and vulnerability. The creator of all things chooses to give all of that up out of love for us. He gave everything so that we might gain everything. And this context in which Jesus is born, that's the reality for the whole of Jesus' life and ministry. Why did he come? The manifesto of Jesus, where he says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, to proclaim the day of the Lord's favor." William Barclay once said, "The fact of Jesus' birth is the final and immeasurable proof that God cares." Whilst I was doing a little bit of Christmas shopping a few days ago, I came across in one of the shops a nativity scene on the shelves, and it had a 50% off ticket on it. And underneath where it said 50% off, there was a little bit of writing, and it said, "Baby Jesus missing." And I thought, wow, isn't that the reality of our culture and our society today? So often the very reason for the season can slip underneath the surface. This Christmas, we know that God is with us. We know that he has a plan and a purpose for us. And we know that he loves us. Many of us, particularly after Christmas lunch, will be full this Christmas. But so many in our nation today are unfulfilled. In a recent study, 84% of people said that they were longing for a less materialistic Christmas. Jesus came so that we might have life, and life in all of its fullness. And the amazing news tonight is that this gift that God gives us is free. He is the most generous gift giver that we can ever know. The good news of Christmas is simply this, that God is with us. He has a plan for us, and he loves us. And if we don't know this God tonight, it's a wonderful encouragement that we can receive this gift just by receiving the gift. The great carol writer said, "O holy child of Bethlehem, descend to us, we pray. Cast out our sin and enter in. Be born in us today."